I watched them file into my late husband's office, my office now, with their practiced expressions of concern, their designer clothes bought with salaries David had given them, their manicured hands that had never built anything reaching out to touch my arm with false sympathy. 23 days since I'd buried my husband, and here they were, circling like vultures who'd finally spotted their moment. "Christine, you look exhausted," my sister-in-law Melissa said, settling into the leather chair across from my desk without waiting for an invitation. Her voice dripped with manufactured worry. "You shouldn't be working so hard. Let family help you through this difficult time." Family? The word tasted bitter in my mouth. I was 52 years old, and I'd learned long ago that the concept of family meant different things to different people. To David, it had meant loyalty, generosity, second chances. To his relatives, it apparently meant opportunity. I leaned back in my chair and studied the four of them arranged before me like a tribunal. Melissa, David's younger sister, 48 and perpetually dissatisfied. Her husband Robert, who'd failed at 3 businesses before David gave him a director position he'd never earned. David's cousin Marcus, 50, who'd shown up at our wedding 30 years ago in jeans and made jokes about me being too fancy for their family. And Marcus's wife Eleanor, who'd once told me at a holiday dinner that education didn't make someone better than anyone else, while her eyes said she thought I believed it did. "I appreciate your concern," I said, keeping my voice level, "but I've been running half this company for the past 15 years. David's death doesn't change my capabilities." "Of course not," Robert jumped in, leaning forward with that eager expression he got when he smelled advantage. "That's not what we're saying at all. We know how brilliant you are, Christine. David always said you were the brains behind everything." Interesting. David had actually said I was his partner, his equal. But Robert's version made it sound like David had been some kind of figurehead, which was exactly the narrative I suspected they were building. "We're just worried about you taking on too much," Melissa continued, and I noticed how she'd positioned herself as the spokesperson. They'd planned this, rehearsed it probably. "The company is so large now, so complex, and you're dealing with grief. It's not healthy to bury yourself in work." "I find work comforting," I replied. "It keeps me connected to what David and I built together." "See, that's just it," Marcus said. And his voice had that edge I remembered from years ago when David and I were still struggling, when these same people would make comments at family gatherings about our tight budget and our little dreams. Back then, when we were eating ramen and working 18-hour days to get the business off the ground, they'd been full of advice about being realistic and accepting your limitations. Funny how success changed people's memories. "The company has grown beyond just you two," Marcus continued. "It's a family enterprise now. David would want all of us to have a say in its future." There it was, the opening salvo. I'd been waiting for it, counting down the days until they'd feel enough time had passed to make their move. 23 days, not even a month. David wasn't cold in the ground yet, and they were already trying to claim what he'd built. "A family enterprise," I repeated slowly. "That's an interesting characterization, Marcus. Tell me, when David and I were maxing out credit cards to make payroll in year 2, where was the family then?" His face reddened slightly, but Eleanor cut in smoothly. "That was a long time ago, Christine. Water under the bridge. We all have regrets about not being more supportive back then. But David forgave all that. He brought us into the company, gave us positions, made us part of his success. That's the kind of man he was, generous, forgiving." "He was," I agreed, "sometimes too much so." The temperature in the room dropped a few degrees. Melissa's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said carefully, "that David believed in second chances, third chances, fourth chances. He believed people could grow into the trust he placed in them." "And they have," Robert said quickly. "Look at the growth in my division over the past 5 years. 30% increase in revenue." I almost smiled. Robert had been in charge of the Northeast Distribution Division, which had grown exactly in line with our overall company expansion. He'd contributed nothing innovative, implemented no successful initiatives of his own. He'd simply maintained the status quo while the company's success lifted all boats. But I didn't say that. Not yet. "I'm sure David appreciated your efforts," I said instead, "just as I'm sure you all have specific thoughts about the company's future direction." "Why don't you share them?" They exchanged glances, a silent communication I wasn't meant to understand. But I'd spent 30 years reading people across negotiation tables. I knew exactly what that look meant. Stick to the script. Melissa took the lead again. "We think the company needs restructuring, more distributed leadership. David held too much personally, controlling interest, final say on all major decisions. It put too much pressure on him. And honestly, Christine, it contributed to his stress levels. The heart attack might have been preventable if he hadn't been carrying so much weight." The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. My husband had died, and she was implying it was partially my fault for not forcing him to share power with his grasping relatives. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my voice steady. "David's cardiologist said his condition was genetic. His father died at 53 of the same thing. Still," Eleanor pressed, "stress is a factor, and now you're taking on even more. We're worried about you, Christine. We think the smart thing, the healthy thing, would be to bring in more family leadership, distribute the burden." "Distribute the control, you mean?" I said quietly. "That's not fair," Marcus snapped, and there was the real voice, the one from 30 years ago that had called our business plan cute and suggested David find a real job. "We're family. We've all contributed to this company's success. Just because you married David doesn't mean you own everything." "Actually," I said, opening the folder I'd prepared and had sitting on my desk since before they'd arrived, "it does. David and I held the company jointly. His will, which was updated 6 months ago with his full mental faculties and in the presence of 3 lawyers, leaves his share entirely to me. I now own 100% of the company." I watched the blood drain from their faces. "That can't be right," Melissa whispered. "He wouldn't. We're family. He promised you what exactly?" I asked, and my voice was sharp now, scalpel precise. "Jobs? He gave you those. Fair salaries? You've received those. But ownership? Control? When exactly did my husband promise you his life's work?" "This is exactly why we're concerned," Robert said, standing up abruptly, his face flushed. "You're not thinking clearly. David would never cut his own family out like this. You must have influenced him, convinced him somehow." "Sit down, Robert." My voice cracked like a whip, and he sat. I'd learned that tone in boardrooms, facing down competitors and hostile investors. Let me be very clear about something. David made his own decisions, always. And his decision was to leave his company to his wife, his partner, who helped him build it from nothing. "We helped too," Eleanor protested. "Once we joined—" "You joined 7 years ago," I interrupted, "when we were already successful, when the risk was gone. Where were you when we were facing bankruptcy? When David was working 3 jobs to keep the business alive? When I was using my teaching salary to cover our mortgage because every penny of profit went back into expansion?" Silence. They stared at me like I'd suddenly started speaking a foreign language. "I remember those years very clearly," I continued, and I let the memories sharpen my voice. "I remember the Christmas when Marcus laughed at the sweater I'd knitted David because we couldn't afford gifts. I remember Elena suggesting I was holding David back with my expensive tastes because I'd bought a $15 dress for a client dinner. I remember you, Melissa, telling your mother that David had married above his station and would probably end up divorced and broken." Melissa's face went white, then red. "That was— I didn't mean. Things were different then." "Yes," I agreed. "Things were different. We were struggling, building something from nothing, and you all had opinions about our chances, remember? Marcus told David he was wasting his prime years on a fantasy. Robert said we'd be smarter to quit while we were only a little behind. Elena suggested I go back to teaching full-time because at least that's stable. People say things, Marcus muttered. That doesn't mean. You're right, I cut him off. People say things. And then, when those people they doubted become successful, they suddenly remember how they always believed and always supported and deserve a piece of the reward. This is ridiculous, Robert said, finding his courage again. So we weren't cheerleaders back then. Fine. But David forgave that. He brought us into the business. He made us directors, gave us real responsibility. That means something. It means he was a better person than most, I said. It means when you came to him, humble and apologetic, asking for a chance after your third failed business, he gave it to you. When you, Marcus, lost your job and needed income to support your family, David created a position for you. When you, Melissa, wanted something more fulfilling than your retail job, David brought you into sales. He helped you because that's who he was. But help is not the same as ownership. Employment is not the same as inheritance. We're not asking for the whole company, Melissa said, switching tactics, her voice turning pleading. Just a fair share. Just recognition of our contributions. David would want us taken care of. David, I said slowly, set up a generous benefit structure for all employees, including family members. Your salaries are well above market rate. Your benefits packages are extraordinary. Your retirement accounts are funded at twice the industry standard. You have been taken care of. Lavishly. That's not the same as ownership, Marcus said, and his voice was hard now, ugly. That's not real security. What happens when you decide you don't like us anymore? When you want to clean house, we're at your mercy. Yes, I said simply, you are. Just like David and I were at the mercy of banks who could have called our loans, at the mercy of clients who could have gone elsewhere, at the mercy of a market that could have crashed. That's called risk, Marcus. We lived with it for years. You're just experiencing it for the first time. We could fight this, Robert said suddenly. Contest the will. There are grounds: undue influence, mental incapacity. I'd been waiting for this threat. I pulled out another document from my folder. This is a letter from David's physician, dated 5 months ago, confirming his excellent mental health and cognitive function. This is a video recording of David, made at the same time as his will update, explaining his reasoning in his own words. And this, I laid down a third document, is a letter from David to all of you, to be opened in the event of his death, explaining exactly why he made the choices he made. I watched their eyes fix on that last envelope. None of them reached for it. Would you like me to read it? I asked softly. No, Melissa said quickly, too quickly. I think I will anyway, I said, and I opened the envelope with steady hands, though my heart was hammering. This was the moment David had prepared for, the words he'd known he might need someday. His handwriting covered the page, strong and clear. To my dear family, I read aloud. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and I imagine some of you are questioning the decisions Christine and I made regarding the company. I want to be clear. These decisions were mine. Christine tried to convince me to be more generous in the will, to give you shares, to make you partners. I refused. I looked up. They were frozen, listening. I refused, I continued, because I've watched how you've treated the opportunity I gave you. Not all of you, but enough. I've seen the expense reports padded with personal charges. I've heard the comments about how Christine doesn't understand family loyalty. I've noticed who shows up for work and who coasts on the success others built. I've seen who respects the business and who sees it as an entitlement. More than that, I've remembered. I've remembered who stood by us when things were hard. I've remembered who believed in us when everyone else laughed. I've remembered who sacrificed their own security to help build something bigger. That person was Christine. Only Christine. I love you all, but love doesn't mean giving you something you haven't earned. Love sometimes means protecting what you've built from those who would squander it. Christine has my full trust, my full confidence, and my full authority. Whatever decisions she makes for the company's future, I support completely. She has earned that right through years of partnership, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment. If you're angry reading this, ask yourselves why. Is it because you truly contributed more than you've already been compensated for? Or is it because you counted on my death to give you what you never earned in life? I hope you choose to stay with the company and prove my faith in your growth wasn't misplaced. But that choice is now Christine's to make. She will be fair, she will be strategic, she will honor my memory by protecting what we built. Please honor my memory by respecting her authority. With love and clear eyes, David. The silence that followed was profound. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. So that's it then, Marcus finally said, his voice hollow. You get everything, we get nothing. You get exactly what you earned, I corrected. Good jobs, fair pay, respect as long as you give it. What you don't get is ownership of something you didn't build and control over decisions you're not qualified to make. And if we don't accept that, Eleanor asked, her voice cold. Then you're free to seek employment elsewhere, I said calmly. I hear the market is competitive right now. Of course, you'd be walking away from generous salaries, excellent benefits, and positions that honestly exceed your qualifications. But that's your choice to make. I watched them process this, saw the calculations happening behind their eyes. They'd come here expecting a grieving widow, overwhelmed and willing to share power just to have help. Instead, they'd found something else entirely. I need some air, Melissa said abruptly, standing. The others followed suit, moving toward the door in a stunned cluster. Before you go, I said, and they paused. There's one more thing you should know. They turned back, wary now. David and I didn't just run this company together. We planned for every contingency, including this one. I pulled out one final folder. These are my instructions to our legal team and board of directors, to be executed if I die unexpectedly or become incapacitated. The company will be placed in a trust, professionally managed, with clear succession plans that prioritize demonstrated merit and commitment. Your positions will be protected as long as your performance merits them, but there is no scenario, none, in which any of you gain control through my absence. I let that sink in. David protected his life's work from beyond the grave. I'm doing the same. Not because we don't care about family, but because we care more about what we built and what it represents. Excellence, integrity, earned success. Robert's hands clenched into fists at his sides. This is vindictive. You're punishing us for ancient history. No, I said quietly. I'm protecting the future from people who've shown me exactly who they are. David wanted to believe in redemption. He gave you all chances to prove yourselves. Some of you rose to the occasion, others simply enjoyed the benefits while resenting the source. I stood up, ending the meeting on my terms. Here's what happens now. You go home. You think very carefully about whether you want to continue working here, under my leadership. If you do, you come in Monday morning, ready to contribute meaningfully to this company's success. You respect the hierarchy. You do your jobs excellently. You act like the professionals David believed you could become. I walked around the desk, meeting each of their eyes in turn. If you can't do that, submit your resignations. I'll provide generous severance packages and excellent references for the work you have actually accomplished. No hard feelings, just an acknowledgement that this situation doesn't work for you. And if we stay? Melissa asked, her voice small. Then we build something together, I said. Not as owners and employees, but as a team working toward shared success. I'll be fair. I'll listen to good ideas. I'll reward genuine contribution. But I will not be manipulated, pressured, or made to feel guilty for protecting what David and I created. They left without another word, filing out of the office like mourners from a funeral, which in a way I supposed they were. They'd come here expecting to inherit a fortune. Instead, they'd inherited a choice: earn their place or leave it. After they'd gone, I sat alone in the office David and I had designed together, surrounded by the evidence of our shared life. Photos from our early days, when we'd been young and broke and burning with ambition, awards from our first major successes, newspaper clippings charting our company's growth, and on my desk, the letter David had written, knowing I'd need his voice to back mine even after he was gone. I picked up my phone and called our head of HR. "Margaret, it's Christine. I need you to prepare severance packages for 4 employees, director level. I'll send you the names, include 6 months' salary and full benefits continuation. I want them ready by Monday morning." "You think they'll resign?" Margaret asked. "I think at least 2 of them will," I said. "And I think I'll be asking the other 2 to step down from their director roles into positions that better match their actual contributions. Either way, we're restructuring." "David would be proud of you," Margaret said quietly, "standing your ground like this." "David gave me the tools to stand," I replied. "The will, the letter, the legal protections. He knew this was coming, even if I wanted to believe better of them." After I hung up, I allowed myself a moment of grief, not for David's death, which I mourned every day, but for the fantasy I'd held of family unity. David had been right to be pragmatic. His relatives had shown their true colours the moment they thought I was vulnerable. But I wasn't vulnerable. I was 52 years old. A woman who'd helped build a multi-million-dollar company from scratch. I'd survived market crashes, hostile takeover attempts, and countless challenges. I'd learned to be strong because I had to be, learned to be smart because intelligence was my best weapon, learned to be strategic because survival demanded it, and I'd learned from the very best teacher, my husband, who'd combined incredible kindness with absolute clarity about what mattered. He'd forgiven his family's early mockery because he understood that fear and ignorance often manifested as cruelty. He'd given them opportunities because he believed in second chances. But he'd also protected what we'd built, understanding that sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes family means the people who stand by you in the dark times, not the ones who show up to claim their share when the lights come on. I looked at the photo on my desk. David and me, taken 30 years ago in our first tiny office, exhausted and exhilarated after signing our first major contract. We'd known even then that we were building something that would outlast us. We just hadn't known how many people would try to claim it was theirs. The phone on my desk buzzed. Margaret again. "Christine, Melissa is online too. She says she wants to apologise and talk about moving forward." I wasn't surprised. Melissa had always been the smartest of the 4, the quickest to calculate odds. She'd realised that keeping her director position under my leadership was better than starting over somewhere else at 48. "Put her through," I said. As I waited for the connection, I thought about David's letter, about his faith in people's ability to grow. Maybe Melissa would surprise me. Maybe she'd actually learn something today about earned respect and genuine contribution. Or maybe she was just smart enough to recognise when she'd lost. Either way, I'd know soon enough. And either way, I'd be ready. Because that's what 52 years of life had taught me. Stay prepared, trust your judgment, and never apologise for protecting what you've earned. David had believed in building something that mattered, in creating not just wealth but legacy, in leaving the world better than we'd found it. I intended to honour that belief by protecting it from those who'd never understood it in the first place. The line clicked. "Hello, Melissa," I said, my voice calm and professional. "What can I do for you?" And as she started talking, offering the apology I'd expected and the commitment I'd have to verify through actions rather than words, I looked out the window at the city beyond, at the empire David and I had built together, at the future I'd protect alone. 52 years old, widowed, in complete control. Exactly where I'd earned the right to be.